You ever be so boring people forget you're in the room? That's been me since age 11. My name's Travis. I'm 39. I do corporate risk modeling for a boutique investment advisory firm in Midtown. Translation: I get paid to be cautious. My entire life is structured spreadsheets, stable dividend stocks, and the correct angle to hold a handshake. My wife, ex-wife now, spoiler alert, is Harper. 35, shiny, Harvard MBA, a VP at a mid-sized private equity firm with ambitions like skyscrapers. She wears power suits that cost more than my car and believes networking brunches are actual meals. We met at a CFA mixer. I told her a joke about synthetic bond ratings. She laughed. We got married 4 years later. Classic finance love story. We had a system. I brought the stillness. She brought the fire. We worked because I didn't need the spotlight, and she didn't mind dragging me along behind her like a designer tote. Or so I thought. The first crack in the facade came from the dumbest thing, a misfired email. I was working late, again, when I saw a ping come in from Harper's work domain. Subject line: Travis. Now, we share calendars. Nothing suspicious about emails. But this one, meant for HR, came to me. Some poor junior analyst, a kid named Dylan who still uses LOL in emails, hit the wrong Travis in the address book. Here's what it said. Not judging, but like, you're really gonna marry the guy who wears Crocs to the beach? Skull. That's it. One line. One stupid joke. But it hit different. Because I do wear Crocs to the beach. Not as a style statement. They're practical. Comfortable. Washable. A safe choice. And in that moment, I realized something. That's how they saw me. The safe one. The guy you marry for tax reasons. The man who won't cheat, won't cry, won't fight, just won't. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just curious. So I replied to Dylan. Hi Dylan. Wrong Travis. But thanks for the fashion feedback. Crocs are indeed polarizing. Good luck with HR. No response. 2 hours later, Harper called. Her voice was bright, too bright. Like someone holding back a scream behind a customer service voice. Hey babe. How's your night? Long day here. So crazy. Casual. Breezy. Like she didn't know. I didn't bring it up. Not then. I wanted to see where this went. Because if there's one thing risk analysts are good at, it's tracking inconsistencies. So I started watching. Nothing obvious. Just small things. Like the sudden late-night meetings she didn't mention. Or the way her gym bag started staying in her office overnight. Or how she laughed a little too hard at texts she never let me see. Then came the firm's internal birthday email. Harper's company does this cutesy thing where they send out a monthly newsletter with mini bios and photos from the month's celebrations. Normally, she never brings them up. But one night, she left her laptop open on the kitchen island. There it was, big, glossy, smiling photo of her at some rooftop party with string lights and fake laughter. Monthly spotlight. Our July stars. I zoomed in. There was Harper wearing the navy jumpsuit I thought she'd donated, smiling like a toothpaste ad. And there, just behind her, was a man's hand. Not just near her. On her. Right on the curve of her lower back. Casual. Intimate. Like it belonged there. And that hand? It wasn't mine. Still, no confrontation. I just took a screenshot. Saved it to a folder on my desktop labeled Audit. Call it emotional due diligence. Now, I'm not tech savvy. I don't hack phones. I don't check text logs. But I do know how to talk my way through a receptionist. So the next day, I called Harper's firm. Claimed I was compiling a private collection of her career milestones for our anniversary and wanted any public-facing photos or event shots she might have been in. Receptionist: oh my God, that's so sweet. Me: yeah, I'm really proud of her. She emailed me a zip file within the hour. 17 photos. All internal parties from the past 6 months. Harper was in 9 of them. In 5, she was next to the same guy. Same hand. Same smirk. Same glass of overpriced scotch. Name tag in one of them read, A. Covington. I Googled him. Andrew Covington. 42. Executive Director. Harvard grad. Divorced. Promoted twice in the last 2 years. Known for mentoring younger talent. Of course he was. I dug deeper. His name came up in a few internal press releases. One in particular caught my eye. Congratulations to Harper Lynn and Andrew Covington for spearheading the successful Darnell acquisition. Leadership in motion. Leadership. Huh? Translation: he promoted her. Or pulled strings. Or mentored her in hotel rooms on the firm's dime. That's when I got mad. Not just because she was cheating, but because she was doing it upward, climbing the corporate ladder with my marriage as a stepping stone. And still, I said nothing, because I had a plan. See, Harper's firm had just gone public. Small float, mid-tier IPO, but enough that it triggered shareholder rights for anyone with vested shares. So I bought some. Just enough. Enough to get me an invite to the quarterly shareholders meeting. The one happening in 3 weeks. The one where Harper was scheduled to present her Vision 2025 strategy deck in front of the board, the partners, and half the damn floor. Perfect. Now all I needed was the right question. There's a funny thing about being the safe one. People underestimate you. They assume you won't fight, won't snoop, won't play dirty, because you don't look like someone who knows how. That's what makes it so satisfying when you finally show them just how dangerous a man with patience, time, and financial literacy can be. 3 weeks. That's what I had until the shareholder meeting. And let me tell you, I used every single day of it. First order of business, figure out what the structure of the meeting actually looked like. Most people think these things are smoke-filled rooms or mahogany boardrooms with cigar-puffing billionaires shouting at each other over numbers. Wrong. This was corporate theater, scheduled, rehearsed, and tightly controlled. I wasn't a major stakeholder, so I wouldn't be sitting at the round table. But I would have the right to attend. Even ask a question. During the Q&A window, one of Harper's colleagues had mentioned that the company encouraged investor transparency and accountability, which is corporate PR for, we'll let you speak, but we'll act like you farted in church if you say something unflattering. Perfect. I started by drafting my question, not the one I'd actually use, but decoys. I needed options. Something veiled, but razor-edged. That could slip past legal but still punch like brass knuckles. I tested them on a friend of mine, Kyle, who worked in compliance at another firm. I gave him the questions as hypotheticals. This one sounds aggressive, he said about one. And this one might get you kicked out. What about this? I asked, reading the one I'd been sitting on. Given recent discussions around leadership ethics and upward mobility, how does the board monitor for potential conflicts of interest between executives and their direct reports, particularly when promotions and personal relationships overlap? Kyle blinked. Then he smiled. Now that's a landmine with a bow on it. That was the one. I started preparing like it was my thesis defense. Dug into SEC filings. Read every press release the company put out in the last 12 months. Looked at who sat where on the board. Who was connected to who. Who might already be suspicious of Harper and her golden boy. Turns out Andrew, Mr. Hand on the lower back, had a record. Nothing scandalous. But a whisper trail. 2 other female subordinates who left quietly after undisclosed personal reasons in previous companies. Nothing ever stuck. But HR doesn't leave breadcrumbs unless there's been fire somewhere. Meanwhile, at home, Harper had no idea. She was still playing the part. Coming home late. Claiming she was doing mock presentations with Andrew or rehearsing pitch decks. She even started meal prepping again, like she'd suddenly remembered I existed. One night she asked if I wanted to go away for a weekend. Said we'd been distant lately and maybe some beach air would help. I almost choked on my wine. Oh, you want me to wear my Crocs again? I said, deadpan. She flinched. Just for a second. Then forced a laugh. Oh God, you saw that stupid email, didn't you? Not stupid, I said. Just honest. She tilted her head. You know it wasn't meant to hurt you, right? Dylan's just a kid. He was teasing. Sure, I said, sipping. But jokes usually come from truth. You agree with him. She paused. Then, the classic deflect. I think you're the most stable person I know. And I need that. You keep me grounded. Grounded. That's what she called it. Like I was gravity. Invisible. Necessary. But taken for granted until she wanted to fly. I smiled. Thanks, Harp. That means a lot. She reached across the table and touched my hand. I looked at her like I didn't know she was sleeping with her boss and that I'd just reserved a front row seat to her professional combustion. That night, I booked a haircut. Bought a new suit. Nothing flashy, just sharper. Slimmer. The kind that says I pay attention now. Then, 2 days before the meeting, I made one final move. I emailed the shareholder relations contact and confirmed my attendance. Used my full name. No hiding. The day of the meeting, I arrived early. The venue was a sleek, glass-front conference center in Midtown, the kind that smells like money and dry cleaning. The front desk gave me a printed badge. It said, Travis Lynn, independent shareholder. I pinned it on like armor. Inside, the room was full of chairs lined up theater style. A stage at the front. Projectors, screens, a water station with cucumber slices. There were about 60 people, mostly suits, mostly bored, but all with ears. At 10:07 a.m., the executives filed in. A few polite claps. No one stood. Then I saw her. Harper. She looked perfect. Crisp navy suit, hair tied back, those ridiculous $900 heels that made her look like a walking Bloomberg article. And next to her, Andrew Kivington. Still smug. Still handsy. Still deeply unaware that his next 48 hours would become the worst of his career. The meeting started. The CEO welcomed everyone. Talked about growth, revenue, synergy, buzzwords that mean nothing and everything. Then came the deck presentations. Harper's was last. Of course it was. She always liked the closing pitch. Leave them with your face in their memory. She stood up, clicked through her slides, talked about Vision 2025 and scalable trust models and diversified assets. I watched the room. Most people nodded. A few tapped on their phones. Andrew watched her like he was watching himself win. When she finished, the board clapped. It wasn't enthusiastic, just procedural. Then came the Q&A. A woman in a red blazer asked about sustainability metrics. A guy in a green tie asked about upcoming partnerships. Then, the moderator asked, "Any other questions from our shareholder guests?" I stood, raised my hand. Microphone came. All eyes turned, including hers. And I asked, "Given recent discussions around leadership ethics and upward mobility, how does the board monitor for potential conflicts of interest between executives and their direct reports, particularly when promotions and personal relationships overlap?" Silence. Not the awkward kind. The loaded kind. The kind that smells like sweat and legal risk. The moderator blinked. "I'm sorry, could you clarify?" I smiled. "Sure. Let's say, hypothetically, a VP is promoted under the guidance of a senior exec. And hypothetically, that exec is also in a romantic relationship with said VP. How would that affect board review and stakeholder confidence?" Dead. Silence. Someone coughed. Andrew's jaw tightened. Harper's face? White. No emotion. Just still. The CEO leaned forward. "We appreciate the questions, sir. However, personnel matters and private conduct are not part of this meeting's agenda." I nodded. Fair. But the SEC and your compliance department might feel differently, especially if shareholders begin to raise concerns outside this room. I sat down. And just like that, it was over. But not really. I saw it unfold in real time, Harper's eyes darting to Andrew's. His going glassy. The whispering behind the board table. A woman scribbling something and handing it off to a man with a legal pad. The moderator stammered through the closing. Meeting adjourned. I walked out without a word. Didn't need one. Because the fire had already started. They just hadn't smelled the smoke yet. There's a strange stillness in the seconds after a corporate meeting implodes. The clapping stops. People glance sideways, not sure if they should pretend it didn't happen or start planning an alibi. But I didn't stay for that part. I walked out of the shareholder meeting like a guy leaving a dentist appointment. Calm, polite, slightly sore, but knowing it was worth it. The second I stepped outside into the Manhattan noise, I did two things. First, I turned off my phone. I didn't want a flood of texts. Not from Harper. Not from anyone who'd been there. I wanted it quiet for a while. Second, I got a sandwich. Roast beef. No mustard. Because that's what you do after lighting a building on fire. Metaphorically, you eat. You fuel up. You watch it all from a safe distance with a napkin tucked in your collar. By the time I got home, it had started. Phone lit up with 5 missed calls from Harper. 2 from unknown. And 1 from a number I recognized, her firm's main line. Voicemail from her? 43 seconds of tightly wound panic disguised as composure. "Travis. Hey. Not sure what that was. You showed up and asked something really weird, and it blindsided everyone. Look, if you're upset about something, I'd rather we handle it like adults, not with performance art at my job. I'd appreciate a call back. Soon." I didn't call back. I forwarded the voicemail to a secure folder and went to the gym. 2 hours later, another voicemail. This one clipped. Angry. "Seriously? What is your problem? You made me look like an idiot in front of the entire board. Andrew had to step out to talk to legal. I don't know what you're trying to do, but it's cruel. You're ruining your own marriage." That made me laugh out loud. My marriage? Honey, you left that thing in a cab months ago. But it got better. Because the next call wasn't from her. It was from Karen. Not the same Karen from the last story. This one worked in compliance at Harper's firm. We'd met once at a firm party, made small talk about crypto before it tanked, and that was it. Until now. Her message was short. Hey Travis, you didn't hear this from me, but you should check the company feed tomorrow. Something's happening. I didn't sleep much that night, but not because I was anxious. I was excited. Corporate gossip travels faster than light when it's wrapped in HR violations. And by 10:24 the next morning, I got the update. Statement from the board of Covell Capital Group. Effective immediately, the board has placed Executive Director Andrew Covington and Vice President Harper Lynn on administrative leave pending an internal review of conduct and compliance with workplace ethics policies. We take matters of integrity seriously and will provide further updates as appropriate. I read it 3 times. Then I emailed it to myself. Subject line, audit confirmed. By noon, the financial news sites had picked it up. Not major headlines, just a few blurbs in the business briefs sections, but enough that her firm's name trended on LinkedIn for a hot minute. My favorite comment? Classic finance drama. CEO's side piece gets caught, both vanish. What's new? Another one. Imagine working your whole life for a VP title just to get axed because you couldn't keep it in your pants. It was savage and glorious. Around 1 p.m., Harper finally showed up at the apartment. She didn't knock. Just used her key. I was on the couch, laptop open, watching a documentary about extinct birds. Didn't even pause it. She stormed in like she owned the place. Are you proud of yourself? She snapped. I looked up. She was in her work clothes, blazer half off, hair pinned too tightly, like she'd tried to hold herself together, but the panic had started to leak through the seams. Define proud, I said. You just cost me my career. I shrugged. Careers built on lies are fragile. You knew that. You humiliated me in front of the board, Travis. No, I said, you did that. I just asked a question. She stared at me. And then, I saw it. The shift. The moment when a person realizes they're not going to win. Not this one. Not today. She sat down. Hard. Like her knees had stopped working. Her voice dropped. I didn't think you'd actually do anything. I nodded slowly. That's the problem, Harper. You married the safe one. You counted on it. We sat in silence for a minute. The kind that feels like 1,000 pages of unwritten confessions. Finally, she spoke. Are you going to divorce me? That one made me smile. I'm not sure we're still married, I said. Legally, yeah. But emotionally? Spiritually? Morally? That left the building somewhere around the 4th party photo with Covington's hand on your hip. She looked down. Said nothing. I stood up. Walked to the table. Picked up a plain manila envelope and handed it to her. She looked confused. What's this? Motion for legal separation. Already signed. Just need your lawyer's info. She held the envelope like it was radioactive. This is a lot. Yeah, I said. So was pretending I didn't know. Then I added, casually, by the way, Covington's first wife filed a harassment suit. Back in 2014. Settled out of court. You might want to update your resume accordingly. Her face drained of color. You did research on him? Background checks. Risk mitigation. You know. The stuff you do before promoting someone. She didn't respond. Just stood. Shaky. I need to think. Take your time, I said. But I'm changing the locks tomorrow. So think quick. She left. Didn't slam the door. Just closed it softly, like she didn't want to wake a sleeping version of her old life. But that life was gone. And she knew it. By the end of the week, I had my lawyer send over the formal divorce documents. No drama. No court. Just straight papers. She didn't contest. Covington resigned 48 hours later. Personal reasons. No statement from him. Harper's administrative leave turned permanent. Not fired, technically. Just not invited back. Last I heard, she moved to San Francisco. Started consulting for some green tech startup. Tried to wipe her online presence. But the internet doesn't forget. Meanwhile, I stayed in New York. Kept the apartment. Upgraded my wardrobe. Even tossed the Crocs. Okay, I kept one pair for laundry days. I'm not a monster. I still work in risk modeling. Still boring on paper. Still quiet. But here's the difference. Now, when people call me the safe one, I smile. Because safe isn't weak. It's just waiting for the right time to strike. Divorce doesn't feel like you think it will. There's no dramatic music. No slam cut to a better life. Just paperwork, awkward logistics, and and discovering that someone you once swore forever to took your favorite mixing bowl without asking. Harper and I didn't fight over anything. Not the apartment. Not the car. Not the friends. Especially not the friends. Most of hers peeled off quietly, like flies sensing a room that's just been fumigated. The only real conversation we had post-separation was through lawyers. Her attorney tried to position the divorce as emotionally influenced by corporate retaliation. Mine sent back a screenshot of her name trending next to Covington's in a workplace ethics thread and a link to 3 press articles using the words suspension, investigation, and breach of conduct. They didn't push back after that. The divorce was finalized in just under 6 weeks. Harper didn't even try to get alimony. I think some part of her knew she couldn't afford the PR hit, not with the financial sector already whispering her name like it was cursed. She was radioactive now. Not because she had an affair that's old news on Wall Street, but because she got caught. Messily, publicly, and worst of all, by her husband, the safe one. Meanwhile, I got quiet. Not hiding, not mourning, just recalibrating. You don't walk away from a relationship like that unchanged. It's not about love lost. I was over Harper emotionally long before the shareholder stunt. It's about recalibrating your identity after it's been shaped by someone else's ambition for too long. The first month post-divorce was mostly silence. I deleted her contact, blocked her on everything. I even set up a filter so her name wouldn't trigger anything in my email inbox, not even in spam. But the universe loves irony. Because just when you think you vacuum-sealed your past, some ghost finds a crack in the jar and leaks back in. It started with LinkedIn. I was updating my profile photo. The old one still had Harper in the background, blurry but present, when I saw it. A message request. From someone I didn't know. Hey Travis, you probably don't remember me, but I interned under Harper at Covell a couple years ago. Just wanted to say, thank you. That shareholder meeting changed everything. A lot of us were stuck in that culture. You pulled the plug. Respect. That one hit weird. Not because it made me feel heroic. I'm not. But because it was the first time someone acknowledged the pattern behind what I exposed. That it wasn't just a scandal. It was a rot. And people had seen it. More messages came after that. Quiet ones. From former coworkers, ex-clients, even someone who had gone on a date with Covington in 2018 and described him as a TED Talk wrapped in a red flag. I didn't respond to most of them, but I saved them. Because as much as I wasn't interested in building an altar to revenge, I wasn't above collecting receipts. Life started moving again. I moved Harper's remaining stuff out of the apartment, boxed it, labeled it H, returned to sender, and had it couriered to her new address in San Francisco. I even tucked a small note inside one of the boxes. It said, "Your ambition didn't fail you. Your ethics did." No signature, but I know she read it. A week later, I got a Venmo request for $12. Caption, "For the bowl you care so much about." Smirking face. I declined it. Blocked her there too. The rest of the month passed in a blur of quiet habits. Gym, work, groceries. Occasional drink with my buddy Kyle, the compliance guy who helped finesse my shareholder question. He called it the roast of the fiscal year. Dude, he said one night over bourbon, you realize people in our circle are still whispering about it like you dropped a mixtape. I just asked a question, I said. Yeah, Kyle grinned. And you started a forest fire. He raised a glass. To the safe ones. We clinked. I didn't smile. But I nodded. Because he was right. Being safe doesn't mean being passive. Sometimes it means playing the long game. Watching. Waiting. Knowing that the moment you strike, it'll land with enough force to split someone's legacy clean in half. But even after all that, I had this strange itch. Not regret. Not doubt. Just residue. A kind of psychic stickiness that happens when you realize you spent 4 years loving someone who turned you into a footnote in their ambition story. And maybe that's the part people don't talk about after revenge. The cleanup. The part where you still remember how they took their coffee. Or what TV shows you pretended to like because they did. Or the weird, hollow echo in the apartment where their laugh used to bounce. I wasn't haunted by Harper. But I wasn't untouched either. And then came the final piece. A letter. Not an email. Not a text. An actual letter. Mailed. Stamped. Addressed in handwriting I knew immediately. I left it on my kitchen table for 2 days. Didn't open it. Just stared at it like it might self-destruct. Eventually, curiosity won. It wasn't long. Just a single page. Travis. I don't expect forgiveness. I barely expect this to be read. But I wanted to write something that wasn't strategic, or spun, or part of a vision plan. I never hated you. I never even stopped loving you. But I wanted more, and I confused more with different. Andrew wasn't more. He was just louder. And you? You were quiet, but you saw everything. I just didn't realize you also knew how to use what you saw. What you did was cruel, but it was clean, and I deserved it. If this gets forwarded to your lawyer, I understand. But if it doesn't, thanks for reminding me that stability doesn't mean weakness. I read it twice. Then I folded it, put it in the same folder as the shareholder badge and the Covington press release, and slid it into the back of a drawer. Didn't cry. Didn't call. Didn't reply. Closure doesn't need commentary. And I'd already said everything I needed to. With one question. In front of 60 people. You ever sit in silence and realize you're not angry anymore? That's where I found myself 3 weeks after the letter from Harper. Not healed. Not happy. But hollow in a clean way, like the clutter had finally been vacuumed out. No rage. No guilt. Just a flat horizon. I thought that was the end of it. Harper had moved to San Francisco, where she was now consulting for a climate-first fund with a progressive lens, according to her new LinkedIn bio. She'd swapped New York power lunches for ethically sourced smoothies. Her posts were full of ocean selfies and recycled wisdom like, sometimes your rock bottom is your foundation. Sure. Whatever helps you sleep. I didn't check on her often. Once a week maybe. Just to verify she was still drifting out there, orbiting her own narrative. She was trying to build something new. I wasn't going to stop her. But I wasn't done either. Because while Harper was the one who tore up the marriage contract, Andrew Covington was the one who gave her the pin. He enabled it, amplified it, then tried to walk away clean. That didn't sit right with me. Not because I needed revenge. Because I needed the full ledger closed. So I started digging. Not illegal digging. Just the kind that happens when a bored, recently divorced finance guy has access to databases and favors. I pulled public filings on every board Covington had served on in the last 10 years. Found 6. Cross-referenced his roles, his hiring recommendations, his mentorships. 3 of the women he promoted in previous firms left within 18 months. One of them went dark entirely, no digital footprint since 2019. Another now worked in internal compliance at a rival firm. I reached out to the third, a woman named Vanessa who now ran her own consultancy in Austin. We talked. I didn't record it. Didn't need to. But what she said confirmed everything I already suspected. Covington had a pattern. Groom. Promote. Exploit. Evacuate. He never left emails. Never left texts. But he always left damage. I didn't speak up, Vanessa said, because I was scared no one would believe me. And because I didn't want to be that woman who tanked her own career. I got it. Finance is a dirty mirror. It reflects power, not character. But the cracks were there. And all it needed was someone to push. So I called in a favor. Kyle, compliance guy, bourbon buddy, still had contacts in federal risk oversight. Not SEC level, but adjacent. Just tell me, I said, is there anything formal on this guy? Kyle didn't even blink. Not yet, he said. But there's chatter. Can we accelerate it? He laughed. You want a whisper campaign? No, I said. I want a pattern. Something that builds. Quietly. Logically. Legally. Fine, he said. I'll ping someone. But if this bites me, I'm naming my next dog Travis. Fair trade. 2 weeks later, it started. First, a small item on a finance ethics blog. Unnamed executive director under informal review for workplace conduct violations tied to romantic relationships with subordinates. Sources allege this is part of a long-standing pattern of behavior across multiple firms. No names. But if you knew, you knew. Then came the actual filing. Title: Formal Ethics Review initiated, Mr. Andrew Covington. Submitted by Covell Capital Ethics Committee. Date: redacted. It wasn't public. But Kyle slipped me a copy. Turns out, once the Covell board started looking closer at the Harper incident, they found more. Unreported relationships. And used HR channels. Suspicious exit packages. They couldn't nail him for the Harper mess. It was consensual. But it opened the door. 3 days later, Covington's consulting deal with a Midwestern hedge fund mysteriously evaporated. Then he pulled down his LinkedIn. And just like that, Mr. Covington, the smirking elevator hand, the back patter, the whisper promoter, disappeared. Funny how quick the system forgets you once you stop being useful. That's when I finally exhaled. Not satisfaction. Not triumph. Just closure. The ledger was balanced. And my life? Better than it had been in years. I'd gotten back into things I used to enjoy: poker nights, freelance advising, sketching. Yeah, sketching. I used to draw buildings in college. Took it back up like an old shirt I found at the bottom of the drawer and realized still fit. I even started seeing someone. Nothing serious. Just drinks. Conversation. Honesty. Her name was Delia. UX designer. Quiet voice. Loud laugh. She didn't ask about Harper. I didn't volunteer. But on our third date, she said something that stuck with me. "You have this calm about you," she said. "Like you're always 6 moves ahead." It's weirdly comforting. I smiled. Didn't tell her she was right. Just said, "Thanks. I used to be safe." She laughed. "You still are. And maybe I am. But I'm not soft anymore. I'm not the guy who gets overlooked in team photos or whispered about in dumb email threads. I'm not the Crocs-wearing husband at the edges of the power couple narrative. I'm the guy who watched, waited, and detonated. The guy who set a building on fire with a single question. And when the smoke cleared, I was the only one still standing. The final blow didn't come from a boardroom, a courtroom, or a press release. It came from a baby blue envelope. No return address. No name. Just my apartment number, handwritten in ink that smudged a little on the corner. Classy. A little desperate. I didn't open it right away. I was sipping black coffee, half reading an article on behavioral finance, when I saw it in my mailbox wedged between junk coupons and a reminder that my building was testing the fire alarm next week. Funny. 6 months earlier, the idea of Harper sending me a letter might have meant something. Might have implied she was rethinking, reeling, unraveling. Now, it felt like fan mail from the ghost of a brand that went out of business. I placed it on the counter. Stared at it for a bit. Didn't open it until night fell. Inside was a single card, no message. Just a folded photo print. It was a picture of her. Smiling. Hair shorter. Different city skyline behind her. And in the lower right corner, the faint embossed logo of some wellness startup I recognized from her LinkedIn. Taped to the back of the card was a note. Printed. Typed. Classic Harper. New chapter. New roots. I'm learning. Growing. Thank you for the push. H. No apology. No reflection. Just a repackaged version of the woman I already knew, one who never apologized, just pivoted. But here's the kicker. I didn't have to do anything, because Harper had built her new life on a lie she thought I wouldn't catch. Let me explain. A few weeks before that envelope showed up, a recruiter buddy of mine, Evan, messaged me. Said he'd seen my ex-wife pop up in a leadership story on a VC site. Apparently, she'd been pitching herself as a strategic consultant for ethical workplace transformation. I read it and laughed so hard I nearly choked on my sandwich. Because in the article, she gave a quote that made my jaw tighten and my fingers twitch. Here it is, verbatim. I left New York after watching unethical power dynamics devastate a company from the inside. I was part of that culture once, complicit. But I learned. Now, I help organizations build frameworks where integrity isn't optional. Sound familiar? It should, because it was my language. My exact phrasing from a letter I wrote to Harper's lawyer 6 months ago when I outlined why I was filing for divorce. She had lifted whole sentences, reworded slightly, enough to pass plagiarism filters, but not me. She was using my words to brand her redemption arc. She was rebranding herself with the script I wrote when I dismantled her career. I sat there, stunned for maybe 10 seconds. Then I got to work. No anger, just process. First, I opened the original document. Found the paragraph she'd reworded. Unethical power dynamics rot organizations from the inside. I watched it happen. I lived it. And I removed myself from it completely. Then I copied both versions. Side by side. I packaged them. And I sent them, anonymously, to her new company's board. Not to sabotage. Not directly. I included a simple note. You should know where your thought leadership is coming from. Source. Divorce proceedings, filed July 12th, Exhibit D. Didn't sign it. Didn't need to. 5 days later, Harper's profile disappeared from the startup site. Her Instagram went dark again. No announcement. No post. Just another silent exit from another clean stage. And me? I got a notification from a private number. You win. Again. No name. But I knew. I stared at the message. Deleted it. Then I made a small post on LinkedIn. Just text. No photo. No branding. Integrity doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like someone asking the right question in the right room. Sometimes it looks like silence when the drama ends. And sometimes, it looks like walking away from the fire without ever smelling like smoke. It got 800 likes, a dozen DMs, a message from a publisher asking if I'd ever considered writing about workplace dynamics. I didn't answer, but I saved it. Because here's the truth. I didn't tell this story for sympathy, or applause, or validation. I told it because people need to understand that not every villain wears a crooked tie. Sometimes they wear designer heels and sell help quotes and tell you you're boring while stealing your moral compass to build their brand. Harper didn't lose because she cheated. She lost because she bet on silence. She thought safe meant soft, that I wouldn't light a match, that I'd disappear into the background and quietly hold the door open while she left for something shinier. Instead, I stayed just long enough to burn it all down without ever raising my voice. And now? Now I'm good. Not healed. Not rewritten. Just clean. I don't wear Crocs anymore. But I keep them in the back of the closet. As a reminder. Because sometimes being underestimated is your greatest advantage. And sometimes, the safest man in the room is the one who already knows how the whole thing ends. The end. Subscribe to the channel